Hello and welcome to Star Trek Course Podcast. Today we'll be discussing Picard Season 3, Episode 4. I'm your co-host Jordan. Joining me today is my co-host Joselyn, and we're just a couple of dipshits from Chicago. Picard Season 3, Episode 4, No-Win Scenario, written by Terry Matalas and Sean Tretta, directed by Jonathan Frakes. And the summary for this week's episode, Jocelyn, is Picard, Riker, and crew must confront the sins of their past as the Titan drifts helplessly in a mysterious space anomaly, which is a weird
Who is
summary.
writing these?
No idea.
Like, that, what?
The sins of their past?
The sins of their past.
Don't worry. I've written an alternate summary.
Oh, good.
Spiraling towards the center of an alien birth canal, Picard must enlist the help of a grease monkey to hotwire the ship. He also tells his son inappropriate stories at the very bar he previously unknowingly dissed him at 5 years prior.
Yeah, spot on.
Thank you.
Spot on. Literally nothing else happened that entire episode.
That's right.
Yeah.
And what did you think of No-Win Scenario?
So far, this is like my least favorite episode, but it's still really good. It's still really good, and I love the concept of these kinds of episodes where it does seem like death is imminent and everyone is just like taking the time to make themselves right with each other. I love that. I loved those moments. It was just missing some things for me. But overall, yeah, this continues to be a very strong season for Picard and a very strong outing for the Star Trek franchise in general.
Excellent. Yeah, I don't know. I think it might be one of my favorite ones so far.
Oh, wow.
Of the
okay.
4.
Ooh.
I definitely had some nitpicks with it, but nothing that really impacted the overall story for me. I was a little concerned where they were going to go after last week with certain storylines that we'll get into, but I did enjoy it, and I'm excited to kind of be out of this. At least the last 3 episodes seem like, part of a very long episode, and we're finally out of this nebula, and it'll be interesting to see where we go, because obviously you're not going to be introduced into too many new characters or storylines while you're trapped in this nebula, especially this episode. We didn't get any B story at all.
Right.
So,
right.
Unless you want to count what happens on the Shrike, which we'll talk about as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's get into our pros for this week's episode, Jocelyn. What did you like about it?
Well, usually I start my pros with the fashion, and I didn't write a thing down. There was no, it just wasn't a fashion episode, which...
People aren't really changing their clothes.
I know, and I'm trying not to hold it against them, but I guess if I had to, drum something up, I could comment on... I hadn't really looked at the uniforms until this episode. I don't know why. Maybe because there was a lot of talking and I had time to kind of look at that. I do like these uniforms, especially I really love Picard's uniform they have him in and the pin that they have him wearing. I do really dig that. Other than that, I really can't even give Jack Crusher props for his bar flashback from 5 years ago look, because it was just a baseball cap and a jacket, and it's like, come on, man. You look like you're trying to disguise yourself from a man who has no idea who you are and doesn't look anything like you, but whatever. Let's move on. This is small, but for the first time this episode, when I was watching it, as soon as the intro started, I didn't hit skip intro. And I was like, oh, let's see what they're doing with the intro. And it was just so short and to the point, and the music was great. I love that they're doing that. I love that we're not getting a minute and a half animated thing. I really... Less is more. It's almost classy in a way. And it's almost such a... I don't know. It's such a power move to be yeah, we don't need an intro. We have so much content in this show. We just have to get right to it. Loved that. I think this was Shaw's strongest episode. This guy. We learned a lot more about him this episode. I was finally able to, I think, like combine the things I don't like about him and the things I like about him. They just kind of got like smushed together this episode into one person who I really enjoy, even when I'm not like outright enjoying him. You know what I mean?
Yes, kind of. I still have a few little issues with Shaw, but obviously he's grown quite a bit. And I think that's like the characters have story arcs in this show, which is nice.
Very nice.
Yeah, there's definitely been some payoff for sure. I still don't love a captain of a starship being like, whatever.
That is so
girl. Like, this isn't Clueless, dude. This is.
I mean, blame it on the space pain meds, but
I did kind of like, don't come when someone's like knocking at his door.
Yeah, because we've never heard that, have we?
No, not really.
We've never had, toys come, or it's open, or like some variation on that. But for him to be like, don't come, it's pretty great. I thought it was great to have a holodeck experience on a starship again.
Yeah.
That it was 10 forward. Probably not. And I understand they had to tie the flashback with what was happening right then. Yeah. So I understand that, like, for the purpose of this episode, it made sense to be 10 forward. I'm just saying I miss those holodeck episodes where we were all like in Renaissance wear, or were, like in some exotic locale. I really miss those.
It's a little weird for Picard with his son who he just met, like, hey, you want to go to a Ren fair in the holodeck?
But what a way to break the ice. Right?
Break something.
Okay, well, break something. But just having the holodeck alone, very, very glad to have it back. One of the best lines of this series so far is when they're in the bar. And he's like, there is something I wanted to ask you. And it's so serious. And in the back of your mind, you're like, it's going to be a joke, but I couldn't get there fast enough, which is so great. But then he was like, the hair, when did it go? And you were just like, oh, I knew it. That is great. When like what they say is a confirmation of what you thought they might say, but it was so fast that you didn't get there before they did.
Yes.
It was awesome. It was a great moment. A great, great moment. And I loved that. Yeah. It was good. And Deanna's finally back. We saw Deanna. Could she have been bigger? Could I have had more of a close-up? Yes, please.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what she was wearing. Like, but the fact that she was even there makes that a pro for me. And then, how cute were those space babies? Those little space jellyfish octopus things.
Yeah,
squids.
They're very much like a four-eyed, like Farpoint Baby Yoda looking thing.
I think it's hilarious to me that a space squid octopus jellyfish mashup would have like any combination of a set of human baby doll eyes. That was, I think, specifically put on there just to make us think they were adorable. But I don't know. I was into them. I liked the whole being in a womb thing. And do human eyes make sense on a space baby? No. Do they make them look infinitely cuter to a human? Yes. So I get it.
Yeah, I wish they went for less of the cutesy vibe and just made them look like glowy jellyfish without eyes. Cause
yeah,
you would need eyes, but
I suppose.
Gotta sell those toys.
Gotta sell those Picard season 3 toys. You know it. And that spin-off animated show about, squid babies, space squid babies. I don't know what you would even call it. Yeah, that's it. That's my pros. I don't really have any neutral zone stuff this week. Yeah, that's it. What did you think? What are your pros for this week?
I have a lot of pros and a lot of neutral zones, honestly, this week. I kind of talked about this in Discovery, where in some cases we don't care about like the flashback episode that we never heard about or that we never saw, but we hear about. In this case, like I really am sad that I didn't get to see Picard and Worf fighting a Hirogen. Like that would have been awesome. But I like that story. I like this little, Voyager tie-in. I'm not sure where they were that they're fighting a Hirogen from the Delta Quadrant, but
yeah,
I'm game.
Work it in. You've got a wormhole transporter thing. Let's go.
I liked Seven. Like she's been very strong this season, and that she has a much more meaningful purpose this season. Again, she has kind of like a story arc of where she starts, and she's not sure that she should even be there. And then you have, Sydney LaForge, which will come back later in this episode, going to her and, telling her that she looks up to her and she has a respect for her and calls her, by her actual, what she wants to be called. We get a picture of Odo in this episode on the pad, which is very cool.
The bucket.
His bucket. His fun size bucket,
I wasn't even going to mention the bucket because I didn't know where to put it, but the bucket has always been weird, but the further on in canon that it gets, the weirder it is to me that they have.
Let's be real, like elephant in the room, there's no way that changeling fits in that bucket.
I mean, that, but also, like, am I to believe that every changeling has to bring this bucket, essentially this, like, bedside commode with them everywhere they go? I mean, this goes beyond bringing your own pillow on vacation. This is like you have to have your molting bucket. Which, of course you do, yeah. And, like, in a world where we have, like, all this technology and you just have, like, a steel bucket, like, could it fold into, like...
I mean, at least...
and fit in your pocket or something?
Like, shapeshifter supply, you go down and get your molten bucket. Yes.
Huge market out there for, like, nice embossed molting buckets.
And I don't know where, like, Odo obviously got his somewhere not from the Great Link. So why would the Great Link have the same bucket that Odo used? Like,
I don't. Maybe Odo
bucket or something.
Popularized the molting bucket.
Probably.
They were like, there wasn't a thing before him, and now it's the Odo bucket. Everybody wants one. Everybody's got one.
Yep, there's your fashion corner for the week.
Oh, the molting bucket. Oh, what a missed opportunity.
You mentioned this. They actually acknowledged Picard's hairline and Jack being named after his dad. They kind of talked about both of those things. So I feel like they're covering their bases almost too neatly in some cases, but at least they're doing it.
True.
I also felt that the Riker and Troy difficulties were believable as to why he's kind of separated from her at this point and has gone off gallivanting, and it seemed believable to me. I can't remember how much time has passed between when they lost their son. I don't know if that was like recent in Nepenthe. I'd have to rewatch that episode, or if it's been several years. I don't think it really matters how long it's been.
Right.
But that was interesting. It's easily, for me, this one is one of the best new episodes of Star Trek, just because it embodies what Starfleet is about, and you have kind of that TNG feel to it from the music, the crew, but also just like being in a conference room discussing how they're going to handle the situation and everybody working together and adding something to find resolution for this kind of no-win scenario. Because there's I'm a sucker for that. Like, you could pretty much do any Star Trek show, have the crew in this impossible situation and have them try to find a way out. So, and it's not something you're probably going to come up with in your head. So I thought the Shrike would come in and rescue them, or another Federation vessel would show up and rescue them. But no, they get themselves out of it. And, by hot wiring a starship. So that was pretty cool. We get an Admiral's log from Picard. So that also feels very Trek, having like the Captain's log or just the Admiral's log. And Riker throws an asteroid at the Shrike. I thought that was very cool.
We haven't seen that before, right?
not in that capacity, and definitely just like, you throw a ship at me, guess what? I'm gonna throw a rock at you. So that was pretty cool. And I was actually right about Shaw being on the USS Constance. I thought like his family had died or gotten killed by Locutus, but it was actually just like, his 30 closest friends apparently.
Oh, okay.
So, because that's what I was talking about a year or two ago when I saw like the USS Constance in the post-credit scene, and why he might have been like so short with Seven and Picard because they're former Borg, and that's why he has this huge thing against the Borg. So he was on that ship that I referenced in the post-credits, which everything was kind of redacted about it. And we kind of find out he has like this survivor's guilt of, he was the 10th one selected, and a bunch of people that he knew and worked with died just because, you could only fit 10 people on the life raft, and he was one of them. So I could definitely see that.
Right.
It's been 20 something years. Unfortunately, he has not really dealt with this, and now he's face to face with Picard, and he doesn't handle it great, but hopefully that goes towards him finding some peace and being able to, like, I kind of get where he's coming from in Cisco, because a lot fresher for Cisco, but 20 something years later, you had this captain who was abducted against his will and then forced to have his knowledge taken from him to murder people.
Right.
Like, he did not want to do that in any way. Like, there's zero understanding here from Shaw, and it's not like a rational thing, obviously, but it's just kind of crazy to me how they make so many people anti-Picard because of something that he had no control over. Picard getting to spend some time with his son, I thought was good, and just him having a couple moments with Jack. And Picard also getting captain the ship this week, which is good. He got his line in season 1 or 2 where he sat down and said engage or whatever, but this was him on the bridge of a Federation vessel and taking charge, and very much calling back to previous Next Generation episodes, like Booby Trap, where he's flying through an asteroid field in a shuttle. So that felt pretty cool. And then kind of Riker's rebirth here, where he's telling Troy that something's changed. He feels different. He's seen this life around him. And so he's hopefully going to be back to his former self that we know and love. Neutral zone wise, I had quite a few neutral zones this week. Nothing that impacted the episode too much, but I just felt the episode was trying to be a little too cool. Like, there's some scenes where he's like, you got to find the pot. She's like, you're not talking about cannabis, are you? It's like, no, obviously
that was
not.
silly.
Picard dropping the F-bomb, referring to him as the dipshit from Chicago was kind of funny, but
that
it's just
was
like
good.
So many, like Seven calls Shaw a dick. And I'm assuming that's not his first name. So Picard also telling his son stories about hooking up with some random aliens on this planet with his
that was interesting, yeah.
Or with his mother's dead husband. Yeah.
I mean, no big
cool,
deal.
Maybe not
just your
first story you tell your son.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't his dad. But it was, like kind of like ruined both father figures, I guess, for him in a way.
Yeah,
like,
a little bit.
But whatever, it's fine. Like, we're in a more progressive era that like those things they're still going to be weird. Never mind, I take it back. Can't
I'm
get
not
around
sure
that.
The newer Trek shows have against engineers. Like, I'm not going to spoil Strange New Worlds for anyone, but like Discovery does not have a head engineer, except we do kind of get Tig Notaro's character, who's great, but sparingly. And then this ship just randomly doesn't have an engineer that we've seen. So Shaw, it kind of gives him, I guess the end that he needs to go do that thing and save the ship.
Yeah.
But I would like to see like an engineer that's like in charge of engineering,
Well, was the guy that the shapeshifter?
He was the transporter chief.
Oh, that's right. For some reason in my mind, he was the chief engineer. That would have been a little bit Smarter, but probably too prominent of a role, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, they'd figure it out pretty quickly. Like, hey, what do I do with the engines? I don't know.
Yeah, well...
Should I turn them off and turn them back on again?
Do that thing you do, and we have problems. I don't know.
The holodeck having its own power source is fine to me. It makes sense, but couldn't it be used to power more essential systems at this point? Like, you're spiraling towards death. I understand that you have like this room you can go to be more comfortable with impending doom, but like you have a way out of this potentially.
Well,
I mean, like my computer that I'm on right now, the power supply, I couldn't power my air conditioner with it. I don't know if that's even possible. I'm not smart enough, but like this is hundreds of years in the future. You would think you could plug a battery into the power supply and at least power life support on the bridge or something. But anyways, that's just nitpicky. Doesn't ruin the plot. It's just a little convenient. The Picard bar scene was a little cheesy where he's telling stories to cadets. He's like, I'm not much of a storyteller. And then he's telling stories for like an hour. And then Jack Crusher just happens to be there in a baseball cap being like, what about your family? Do you have any family? Like, what do you want him to say? He doesn't even know about you. Like,
also,
Starfleet's the only family I need. And a standing ovation. Like, oh, yes.
They're like, yes.
So sad and lonely eating fish by himself in a bar. Like, come on.
Oh, my God. I mean, yeah. And I think Jack Crusher really took his time finding his dad. If that was only 5 years previous.
Yeah, he would have been like 18 roughly.
Oh, I guess that makes sense. Never.
Yeah, graduate high school.
It's just because he looks 35 that I keep thinking.
No, 100%.
Also, the way I feel about Jack Crusher would be much more appropriate were he to be 35. So in my mind, I just keep consoling myself with the fact that he's at least in his early 30s.
The actor is 35. So
thank God.
Okay. Did Seven stun that changeling when Sydney comes in? Because the effect was so weird. Like, she shoots the changeling, it like molds into like the shape-shifting thing that we see, and then it turns back into Sydney LaForge with red eyes. Like, what?
But it looked gray, like it was dead. Kinda. Yeah, I don't know.
That's what happens to a changeling when you shoot it with a phaser. So I'm not sure. I'm assuming it's dead, but
I did too. So it might not be dead?
Mirror Odo, when he got shot, he exploded. Like, he got shot with a phaser and he blew the heck up. Sydney LaForge's body just like gelatinously molts and then reforms and then turns a different color. Like,
well, maybe it's different now because each of the shapeshifters, that's a very different look than the Deep Space Nine.
It is
shapeshifters. It's
which
more like
I think that's actually in my cons.
It looks real meaty. Okay, we'll get there.
Yes, yeah. For goo people, like, it's almost as if they are shapeshifting and turning their internal like organs, like bone and blood and stuff and meat. Like on the inside, like you're a goo creature. Like, you just basically have a skin suit around you that looks like a person.
Right.
But you're goo underneath. You wouldn't have like bones and blood and meat and like.
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't know. It is really weird. They're huge and they don't look like gelatinous either. They look like a liquefied Horta almost. It's very, very bizarre.
Yeah.
And then lastly, again, just like a little nitpick, but like Jack's line, like 4 more seconds, trust me, is like, I don't know, maybe that scene was supposed to mean something, but they're going straight an asteroid and he's like, wait, let's get closer. And then just the way it's edited, like they just move out of the way and they're fine. It's like, why do you have to get way closer to the asteroid before you move? Like, I don't know.
It was supposed to be like a bonding moment between the two of them.
So.
I just kind of glossed over it in my mind. I was like, all right, whatever.
Most of these things I caught on second watch because like I enjoyed it very thoroughly, like I said. And then the second time I watched it, there was a few things that stood out to me that just like, huh?
Yeah.
And a couple of those things will be in my cons too. But I mean, overall, really strong episode.
Yeah.
It was really cool to see the crew working together, and we're kind of out of this first kind of chapter of the story, this first arc.
Yes.
And we have a lot more to go. So I'm excited. It's kind of like the movies that we never got that continue the story post Nemesis that we've always wanted. So I can't complain too much about it.
Right.
But before we do complain about it and get into our cons, Jocelyn, we have a sponsor.
Ooh.
The Star Trek Wars podcast. With over 300 completely free episodes spanning 9 years, we've covered every Star Trek episode and movie ever. We also have a Patreon page, so if you want more than just Star Trek content, head over to patreon.com/Star Trek Wars, where you can financially support the podcast and get bonus content.
Wow.
We also have a Facebook group that is completely free at facebook.com/group/Star Trek Wars, where you can vote on the weekly polls and leave comments that can be read on air. We actually have an audio comment coming up as well, so you can leave an audio comment, and you can also engage in conversation. We also have a Twitter account at The Star Trek Wars. So check us out on Twitter and wherever you do find social media. Jocelyn, let's get into our cons for this week and maybe what you didn't like so much about this week's episode.
So, cons. And I don't have a lot, and maybe they're nitpicky, but I will tell you something right now. Those cadets in the bar, so annoying. They annoyed me so much. I know for a...
They're stopping a man from eating a hot meal?
Stopping a man from eating a hot meal. He's clearly enjoying himself. It's like this weird mixture of gross hero worship and also like, I don't know, it's like seeing a celebrity and they clearly don't want an interaction with you. And you go up and you're like, oh my God, I love your work. And they're like, oh, thank you. And they
like
look...
seeing Patrick Stewart at a restaurant?
It would be like that, only I would be more annoying than these cadets in that case. But when they make eye contact and they thank you and they look back to what they were doing, that is your cue.
They're done.
They are finished with you. They do not want to eat a meal with you. They do not want to continue having a conversation with someone who they don't know and who might be like insane. So, but these cadets... they're just like such a group. Like, why did they annoyed me so much? I just wanted them to go away and leave Jean-Luc to have his... I mean, those fries were stone cold by the time he got to them. Stone cold.
What? Yeah, so it is 2500s or 2497, whatever, when he's eating this meal.
Yeah.
So one could also argue that he's going to this bar because he knows that cadets will be there because it's near Starfleet headquarters and he wants to be recognized so that he can tell them stories.
Right.
Because why else is he beaming over from France to LA to have fish?
I guess so. That's a good point, actually. But, like, why not just invite them to come sit down and all of you eat? They're just standing there. So someone's in the wrong here. Someone needed to step up and either walk away or he needed to invite them to sit down. Like, it was just too long.
That's true. That was a lot of standing.
It was a lot of standing.
I don't care who you are.
Yeah, I agree. I'll just sit down and make me leave. So Vatic goes over to her like decorative Christmas platter and cuts off her hand, which anamorphs into a like Ghost Rider face.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm confused. Like, is Ghost Rider hand her boss, or is that a way for the founders to communicate to her only?
Yeah, I mean, it could be either. I read it as it is a way for her to communicate to whoever she's taking orders from, and it is part of a changeling, I guess, that she just kind of stows in her... Well, I guess she doesn't have a hand.
Yeah, and like where's the story on that? Did they amputate her hand? Couldn't they just...
No idea.
And why? Couldn't they have just rode along as a hat or something? Why does she have to cut you off every time? I don't get it.
maybe a lot of her body is messed up and there's like changeling goo holding her together. That's part of the deal of why she's helping them.
Oh,
I don't know.
She is very scarred.
My biggest issue with that scene was that she's doing this in the same room, like 10 feet from the captain's chair where everyone can hear her. I was like, you're all expendable. Like, go after, like, I don't know. I guess the rest of the crew just buys into it. But, you know, if I'm on the crew and my boss is going and cutting off her arm and getting orders from a floating goo face,
right?
It's like, yeah, you're all expendable. I'm rethinking being on this ship. Reassessing priorities.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. And they clearly speak English because she's been giving them orders in English the whole time. So it's not like she's having a private conversation.
Universal translator.
Oh, yeah, that's the whole thing in it. Maybe she turned it off for this interaction, and that's
But even when they speak, we get subtitles. So, yeah, who knows?
Yeah, good point. My biggest con is I was so delighted last episode by Worf and Raffi's interactions with each other and dynamic, and then we got like 0 of them this episode. So I'm thinking maybe we're going to get like an extra bolus of them next episode, but I did miss them. I understand why they're not in it. There wasn't really any space for them to be in this episode. It would have just kind of been arbitrarily shoehorned in there, but I did miss them. So it is a con for me, for sure. But other than that, that's pretty much my cons. Did you have any?
I did. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen Worf and Raffi, but you kind of have to pace the story out. There's kind of a bookend to that part of the story. And I think they have to wait for this to end so that Raffi and Worf can go on to their next part of their mission.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll see them hopefully next week. If not, then maybe we'll move into the cons. But the Picard Riker tension for me was a little overplayed from last week for what happened here. It's like Riker and Picard have been through a lot of situations. Riker yells at Picard, tells him he's killed everyone, sends him away. And like 10 seconds to the episode, he's like, I'm sorry, Jean-Luc. He's just like what? So they ratcheted up the tension for nothing. I guess to make us think that one of them was a changeling or something.
Oh,
but I just felt like they were playing with our emotions for very little. It just didn't fully track for me.
I was just so relieved that they like hashed it out early on in the episode because I wasn't into it. But you're right, it was kind of forced.
I also feel that Picard I think their roles were reversed last week, where Picard would be the one that wants to escape and not fight because he has this newfound son and like family that maybe he would want to keep safe. And Riker is like battling this depression, and you know he's out there trying to find some type of meaning, and he's the one that wants to get out of that. I feel like he's the one who would stay and fight because he feels like he has nothing to lose at this point. But that's just something that I was thinking. I do not like the new shapeshifters. We talked about that, where they have like this liquid, meaty look to them, like gelatinous, meaty look.
Yes.
It just Odo. I mean, I understand the graphics were not great in the 90s.
Sure.
They didn't have Babylon 5 effects, obviously, in Deep Space Nine, but like he turned into goo. Like that's what they look like. We see the Great Link. It's not like an all-you-can-eat buffet at Golden Corral of ribs.
Unfortunately,
yeah, it's goo. So I just don't know why they changed it. They could obviously make it look better, but that was a weird look.
I was trying to figure out why it weirded me out so much, and I think it's because it looks like if you just like boiled prosciutto for a really long time, and I love prosciutto, and so seeing it in that form was kind of disturbing to me.
Makes you question your love for prosciutto.
Honestly, also like learning how prosciutto is made makes me question So I just stopped thinking about that. But yeah.
And my last con is kind of a longer, intricate series of cons where like I'm always a little disappointed when characters, specifically in sci-fi and Star Trek, Starfleet officers give up hope. And when they've been in so many seemingly no-win scenarios before, it's kind of weird for them to just admit defeat when they have hours to go, and they do have a lot of resources. A lot of characters have been through worse, and I get like the drama aspect of it, but Riker and most of the crew are acting like towards the end of this episode. First, he doesn't want to do the dangerous thing of opening up the engines and pulling in and trying to ride the wave. But like, you have no other recourse at this point. What do you have to lose? You're gonna die. And then at the end of this episode, he's like, we're only at 98% power. We need that extra 2%. And not only are they pulling power from the comms array, which you can't even use in the nebula anyway, so why are you powering it in the first place?
Sure.
But then they pull power from life support, and the entire, like every bridge crew, we get a discovery moment where every member of the crew look at each other like, what did he just say?
Yes.
We have seconds to live and he's turning off life support, which would, like, you wouldn't suffocate right after turning off life support. The air is still there. You're not venting it into space. Like, you wouldn't start gasping within seconds. You'd probably have more time than before you would detonate and hit that. You have at least minutes, if not hours, of air left.
Right.
And then they're siphoning power from the comms array, which, like I said, shouldn't even be on at this point. You're in a nebula. So why is everyone looking at Riker? Like, it is just a dramatic thing, but just knowing what we know about Star Trek and how things work.
Yeah.
Turning off life supply to save your life,
I kind of just love the drama of it, though. Like, I'm okay with it.
I mean, had they turned off life support, 30 minutes ago, and they have a countdown of how much air, and they're slowly losing it and gasping, like, that makes sense to me.
So that would have been great. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true.
But anyways, that's really all the cons I had. Like I said, I really liked this episode. There were a few things on second watch that, like, it maybe didn't make as much sense to me, but nothing that breaks the episode or ruins, like, those character moments that we had.
Sure.
So that's what we thought. Let's find out what the fans have to say. And Jocelyn, we have an incoming transmission from Ken Holzhauser. Let's see what he has to say.
We sure do. Let's take a listen.
Hello to the Star Trek Wars Council. This is guest counselor, gentleman cartoonist Ken Holzhauser. I have to say, this was everything I've been waiting for such a long time. I'm not sure how much praise or how many brickbats you're going to throw over this episode, but I want to throw in my 2 cents very vocally and say that this episode, the no-win scenario, is the Star Trek I have been waiting for a very, very long time. And it's not just the themes, it's not just fan service or anything like that. There's a spirit to Star Trek that is very specific, and it's about diverse people working together to solve problems. It's about the whole being better than the sum of its parts. It's about full, rich characters that you come to love, all contributing to the greater good. And that's what we got. Everything from Captain Shaw revealing his inner pain and then being brought into the fold afterwards. And 7 of 9 sort of pushingly pointed out that Captain Shaw was dead naming her this whole time too, which I was very happy to see done so subtly and yet so obviously impactfully. Captain Riker has probably never been written so richly and performed so well. You need age. You need gravity. There's a reason why this story hits differently than, say, if this was season, say, 6 of Star Trek The Next Generation. Because these characters feel like they've had a lifetime of good decisions and bad decisions, and they're all learning to be better and working together and learning to be better and finding new life and new civilizations. This is 100% the Star Trek I have been waiting for such a long time. And this is not a knock against Discovery. It's not a knock against Strange New Worlds or Lower Decks, all of which I have enjoyed to varying degrees and found them quite charming. Even the J.J. Abrams movies I have enjoyed to varying degrees and found them quite charming. But this felt like Star Trek. And it's a wonderful sign for the future if the audience recognizes that too and lets the creators know this is the ride we all signed up for. I wholeheartedly endorse this episode, the no-win scenario. And I certainly hope that this means that over the next few weeks, the best is yet to come. Gentleman cartoonist Ken Holzhauser, signing off.
Awesome. Thank you, Ken. Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you had to say.
That was
and
awesome.
You may not get the gentleman cartoonist bit because he does post like hand drawings of like all the Star Trek characters. I'll send you some pictures of those, but he's been doing that for a while with Discovery and this episode. He had like 6 or so hand drawings that he had from characters from Picard. So
that's awesome.
They look a little nicer than my stick figures that I draw.
Really?
But yeah, just slightly.
Surprising.
So thanks again, Ken, for sending that in. We'll get to the non-audio version of the fan comments. Will Flores says, I don't often get emotional watching Star Trek, but this one, man, all the feels. Riker's speech at the beginning, Shaw and 10 forward, the flashback with Jack, and all of this on top of figuring out a no-win scenario. Shaw continues to endear himself as well, which is very welcome. 7 getting to do 7 things was great, and the senior officers getting together to hatch a plan and execute it was just perfect for me. I don't have much to say. I just really enjoyed watching this episode. 10 asteroid missiles.
And then Jeremy Reed says, Hi, I am Jeremy, son of Thomas, House of Reed, father of Connor, father of Oliver, bane to the Babylon 5 community, and slayer of Night Train. I have made some comments. This is a beautiful episode. It's official. Shaw is amazing, and I love him. The Wolf 359 monologue was just incredible. So now 3 of my favorite Star Trek captains were at the Battle of Wolf. Is it 359?
359, yeah.
Apologies.
Which side you were on.
Oh, what? So, oh my God. On the other side, it was 953 or what?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's 3 of my favorite Star Trek captains were at the Battle of Wolf 359, and 2 even fought for the right side. This episode featured a scene where Riker talks to 7 about changelings. Can we just take a second to appreciate that? Will Riker has a conversation with 7 of 9 about changelings. That actually happened in a new episode of Star Trek in 2023. I can't believe this is happening. Oh, and Ed Spielers with his shirt off? More like jacked Crusher. Am I right? I was too embarrassed to put that in my prose, but I agree with Jeremy so much. Okay. Of course, Odo's choice of receptacle would be the number 1 pick on any changeling's bucket list. Whoever is giving Vadic her orders has a very hands-on approach. That's an exciting new form of communication. This is another 10, a 10 talk to the hand. That's pretty good.
Chris Toffa says, I'm going to reiterate what I said last week. This is what I wanted for a Picard series. I'll start with the negative. No Raffi and Worf for this week, to which I felt a little cheated, with the episode more than made up for it from their absence with one of the best monologues in Star Trek history. Shaw is officially awesome. When I think about some of the newer captain additions, Lorca, Anson's Pike, Giorgio, and now Shaw, man, there have been some outstanding casting choices. Following the epic Wolf 359 comments, Jean-Luc leaves 10 forward, and for the first time in history, he didn't feel like the hero to me. Not since the first episode of DS9, when we were introduced to Sisko, has Picard felt so small. 7 continues to shine, and in all seriousness, this could have easily been called Star Trek Riker, as Frakes has stolen the show both in his directing and acting, and I am one to admit that at times the F-bomb feels a little out of place in the Star Trek universe, but not today. Picard dropping the ultimate F-bomb drove home the hurt and struggle. Goodness gracious, it was 10 last week. This could be an 11, but we'll settle for 10. 10 dipshits from Chicago out of 10. I'm so happy, but I wish Renee were still around to be part of the Changeling arc.
Well.
Don't we all?
Don't we all? Lainey Boylette says, now. I started to get worried when they fired up the holodeck after cutting off all essential systems. Granted, they attempted to explain it away, but it's still a load of crap. They don't have an actual bar or mess to do their glooming about. But anywho, I'll let it slide because let me do this phonetically because you totes did it wrong last week.
I think that's referred to me, so.
Okay. Yars! Like that?
Nailed it, yeah.
Thank you, okay. Think Tasha, well, she helped me out. She said, think Tasha and be camp. Was that camp enough? I don't know. Yars! That went to like an Oda or a Yoda place. Okay, moving on. I do wonder whether we may only get virtual Troy seen as she was in the UK when this was filmed, and there was the pesky virus. Points deducted for being too cheap to build another set and forgetting that Oda once held his goo together in Luoxana's dress, and therefore they don't need a stupid specific urn-der. 9 grease monkeys surviving Locutus.
Held our joy. Yeah, and Tasha, also one who's familiar with goo.
Oh,
Too
God.
soon?
Wow, hashtag too soon.
Says, I came into this episode worried it might draw out their sunken state. Hang on, I'm going to start over. I came into this episode worried it might draw out their sunken state another episode, but I didn't think they'd all just party wipe like a D&D campaign. So when the episode slowly ramped up for their explosive escape from the space boom, I really felt the most excited for a Star Trek episode in a really, really long time. The real winner of this episode was simply classic problem solving. Star Trek, every major character contributed something to getting the ship out of danger, and especially Shaw. The dipshit from Chicago ended up being the man of the hour, getting those nacelle covers off. I especially enjoyed his backstory with Picard and his dialogue with Seven that led to their power scene where she told him what for. Shaw fans, yep, good this week. The other power scene was Riker throwing a goddamn asteroid at the Shrike on the way out. Not only was that just a space middle finger to the crazy bird woman, but it was just classic Riker movie moment that translated well to streaming television. I had a few minor quibbles, mostly Picard related, but I refused to let them ruin such a great episode. I do have a question about Vadek's hand, though. Is she a changeling? Is that hand a changeling? Does she go around the universe playing comedy tours? My changeling in me. I feel like Mike McMahon can riff off of this on Lower Decks. 9 shiny buckets of residue on the wall. 9 shiny buckets of residue. You take one down, pass it around. Always call me Commander 7 out of 10.
And then Paul Pinelli says,
okay.
Yeah, it's stuck in my head now too. Oh man, when Shaw was talking Wolf 359, I wanted a visual flashback so bad. One day we need to get the full encounter with proper special effects.
I completely agree. I'm glad that they actually gave like sound effects. I felt that did add to the scene quite a bit, other than just having him talk and kind of like having this response to it that he was having and kind of hearing it again in his head.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a couple instances, the beginning with the Hirogen and Worf and Picard. I would have liked to have seen that scene as a flashback, and definitely Wolf 359 in HD glory, or maybe not glory, but getting to see that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Ariel Nash says, we are on a 4-week streak of brilliant episodes from Picard. I love the focus was on the Titan this week. I would have been so annoyed hopping back and forth between a B story and another location when there's so much to explore on the ship. My highlights were Riker. He stole the show. He came back to himself after his outburst to Picard. He made amends with his friend, sent Seven on a mission, and even though they weren't sure if they were going to survive, and he took the risk for a chance to live. Loved him as captain. Shaw. I think what I love most about him is his monologue. In his monologue is that you listen to it, you begin to understand why he was so mean in the first episode to both Picard and Seven. I knew he would eventually grow on us, and I like how they got us there. And Jack. My heart literally broke during the bar scene. I could see Picard's pain when he realized what he had said to his son many years ago. Which I just want to say, this is such a movie and TV show trope that you say something to someone, and then you realize that you saw them 5 years ago in a bar randomly, and now you're like you don't,
and
see
you ruined their life.
Oh, I saw that person 5 years ago in a bar, but they were wearing a baseball cap, and it just dawned on me now that's who that was. Like, that's not how it happens.
Yeah,
so that is such
unusual,
a tropey thing, but
for sure.
I understand what they're going for and what she's saying here. But yeah, right. That's something when I saw it, I was like, really? Because they have that moment of realization where Picard's like, oh, that's why you never wanted to see me, because I basically dunked on you in the bar saying I didn't need family.
Right.
So, man. Let's see. I blame Beverly for that. During that flashback, Picard was entering a different phase in his life and had accepted at that point that he would never have children. Because he was like 90 years old, of course. Of course, Starfleet would be his family. Such a painful scene all around. 9 ship-destroying asteroids. P.S. My favorite scene was Picard calling Shaw a dipshit from Chicago with a straight face. I laughed the entire time.
That's pretty good.
Man. So thank you all for the feedback this week. It's great to hear pretty much everyone is enjoying the show. I think the lowest score this week was an 8. So that should tell you all you need to know. Speaking of ratings, and that's from the fans, because we could definitely give it a lower score, Jocelyn. So what do you rate this week's episode?
Well,
scenario.
I mean, you're going to get tired of hearing it, but this is another 9 episode for me. 9, that's how many months gestation it takes to make a space baby.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, weird, right?
Or thousands of them.
Yeah, lots of space babies.
I give it a 9 as well. 9 goo people made of Play Doh. Jeremy, we already heard from him. He gave it a 10. 10
nice.
Talk to the hand.
Yeah, that was good.
Because the changelings in the Great Link. And the council give it a score of a 9.22, bring the overall score to a 9.3. So everybody was pretty much on the same page this week. Jocelyn, do you have a next time on for what happens next week on Star Trek Picard?
In lieu of a next time on, I have just a very light, kind of non-stressful hypothetical question for you.
Okay.
What holodeck program would you choose to die in?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. You're on a ship.
I'm prepped for that.
You have 2 hours before the oxygen runs out. What program are you going to tee up?
Ooh, only 2 hours.
Yeah, 2 hours.
I was going to say like Game 7 of the World Series between the Cubs and Cleveland, but it's like 4.5 hours with a rain delay. So,
all right, I'll give you 4.5 hours to live.
I would do like the generic stock answer of just like probably just like vacation on the beach with the kids.
Oh,
that would probably be it. Just running around it's hard to get upset. Of course, I could change the temperature too, so it wouldn't be like 100 degrees.
Yeah, that's very important. Ooh, and the sun doesn't burn you, so you wouldn't have to like take all your time slathering yourself. Even the holodeck sun?
Even on the holodeck. Yeah, I mean, that's LED lights enough to.
That's why you don't use a ring light, because it gives you this weird shaped tan, huh?
Absolutely.
Wow. My choice is definitely, and this is very specific because I have been there, and this is as douchey as I hopefully will ever get on this show, but the one time I went abroad and we went to Italy and we went to Elba Island, which is off the coast of Tuscany.
Where Idris lives?
Oddly, no relation. Yeah, no.
Oh, okay.
Sadly. But the Portofiarto side, which is the Pebble Beaches, was absolutely insane. The water was like 10 feet deep and you could see all the way down to the bottom. But it was hard to dive down to the bottom because the water was salty enough. It just kept you buoyant. Like, floating. And there was this little cave thing we went. It was insane. Yeah. So I'd go there and I'd get absolutely trashed.
Perfect.
Yeah. What about you next time on?
Yeah, so next time on I actually have two. One is very unfortunate because it turns out that Ensign Sydney was just being formal with Seven since Captain Shaw was there. So Seven shoots her, but it is actually Sydney because she did come down there. She is Geordi LaForge's daughter, but she called her Commander Hansen because, Captain Shaw was right there and he's kind of we know what he is.
Yeah, you got to be sure.
So, yeah, Seven has some explaining to do to Geordi when they see each other.
Oh, big time.
They could have some good interactions together, I bet. I'm interested to see that. And then lastly, my next time on is that instead of Picard getting put in command here for the asteroid field, Riker decides to retake command and cue the emergency joystick. I don't know if you remember that from Insurrection where he pilots the ship through the briar patch and just a $20 joystick.
One of those joysticks we had.
Yeah, exactly.
The one we would play Wolfenstein with in like 1997.
Yeah, well, I think we played more like Secret Weapons of the Luftwaffe with the joystick.
Oh, well, for sure. We had the flight simulator.
Wolfenstein was just like space bar with arrow keys.
Oh, yeah, maybe that was.
Cue motion sickness.
Yeah.
But man, it was so satisfying when you found a secret wall that just opened and there's just gold and like turkey dinners all over the place.
It was such a good game. Such a good game.
Right. Yeah, so that was my next time on. I do have some questions going into next week, Jocelyn. Do you have any questions or concerns?
No. I know that we'll see Worf and Raffi on the next episode because I watched The Ready Room, where they did an interview with Todd Stashwick, who is Captain Shaw. They did an entire history of the changelings or the founders, and then they talked to the science advisor for this show. I guess ever since TNG, every Star Trek series has had a science advisor, and this is someone who has a doctorate in space science, I guess, at trying to kind of merge the fiction and the science for the science fiction. And I just thought that it was so cool. I guess I assumed they had someone like that, but to hear them talk about it was so neat because, again, no matter how many articles I read about space, it's still so weird to me, the things that are possible in space. So it was really cool. So,
he's just making that stuff up.
They could be. I wouldn't
the
know.
American consultant they had for Voyager, they just made everything up for Chakotay's character. That's literally what happened.
That's very possible. She seemed very convincing, though. Anyway, how much Raffi and Worf are we going to get? When are we going to meet Lore? I really want to meet Lore this season, and I'm hoping he's the next legacy character we see, but I think it's going to be LaForge.
I do as well. My questions for last week, or what I wanted to see, was to find out what did they steal from the Daystrom Institute, which we talked about, but they haven't answered yet. What's up with Jack's fever dream, which is how they end this episode as well. As another
we didn't even talk about that.
But I guess daydream. Or repressed memory or whatever it is.
Is it Vadic saying, "Find me"?
I don't know. I don't know who it is.
I don't know who it is either.
He's saying,
but if Vadic has a changeling for a hand, could there be a little changeling inside of Jack?
I mean, technically, there could be a little changeling in all of us, and we wouldn't know.
Whoa.
Yeah. What's up with Vatic, and why does she want Jack so badly? I mean, that sounds weird now that I read it out loud. It's like,
I mean, who doesn't want Jack so badly?
Exactly,
Am I right, ladies?
I knew you were going to say that.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Then, which character will we see next is always the question, which I think we're pretty set on LeVar Burton at this point, because he's really the major one that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
So, that's pretty much it for us. We have, obviously, next week will be the halfway point. It's really cool. The first few weeks, like we said, we've had 4 solid episodes, which we haven't had in Picard, like a run of episodes this strong yet. And we're just kind of coming out of it. Feels like that first part. And I know a lot of people have seen the first 6 episodes. So once we get like past that 6th episode, no one's really going to know what's going on. I've been able to stay pretty much like 99% unspoiled so far. So I'm pretty pleased with that. Really, the only things I know about are just what I've seen in the trailer that, showed off certain characters and things that I wish we didn't know about, but I don't think it's going to change the story too much. So, but yeah, Justin, that's it. We'll be back next week, as I mentioned, for the 5th episode entitled Imposter.
Oh. Wow. Can't believe it.
What a title. Let's speculate for the next 30 minutes on who the imposter could be. No. You would think like the Changeling episode this week would be called Imposter.
I know.
So you could definitely see maybe there's some more Changelings out there, maybe in the higher ups of Starfleet.
Oh, I hope so.
That would have made much more sense as to why Bev would have said trust no one. She knew about the Changelings and then woke up too late to warn them about the Changeling being on board. But
cool.
We'll see where it goes. She did mention that they've been, chased down by Klingons and Fenris Rangers and different people. So obviously Vatic has a network.
Yes.
Changelings obviously have a pretty large network. So we'll see where that goes. We will be back next week. Until then, computer and program.
Thanks for listening to Star Trek Wars.